Wow, what a pleasure to be here. I'm wondering if there's anyone if this is your first time at medicine, raise your hand. Yeah. Anyone here last year? Yeah, a few of us. I was here last year and I had such a lovely time that when I got home, I immediately bought a ticket and I said, I'm not going to do any talks or anything. And then I got invited to give a talk and I thought, I'll go on then. And here I am. Here we are on a Sunday, which I think a Sunday is like the best day of a festival, no? Everyone is just a little bit, I don't know, I feel like everyone's a bit more beautiful because we're a bit more feral. We've sort of danced out some of the tension in our bodies. I know my face has got a workout from all the smiling that I've been doing. But yeah, it's a lot, isn't it? Has anyone been a little overwhelmed? Have you had a moment of overwhelm? Yeah, look around. It's a lot, yeah. A lot of connection, a lot of moments of perhaps disconnection. And yeah, I'm here to share this time and space with you to talk about something that I feel really strongly, passionately about, to look at the beauty of connection that we all know in our hearts, the crisis of connection in the world that we're in, to look at how we're kind of biologically primed for connection, that it's something that we carry in us, in our DNA, if we look at our past. And to look at some of and this won't surprise you if you know me or my work, some of our cultural blind spots around connection as well. And I'm here not as an expert. Yeah, I heard these words recently from this wonderful woman, Jane Hardick Collins. She says that the age of the expert is over. No, the cult of the expert is over. The cult of the expert is over. What does that mean? So while I think that there'll always be a need for experts and kind of specialists in a field and a kind of narrow field of knowledge, I think what we need more of, what we need to foster and cultivate, is those of us who are interested in the relationships between things. Because often an expert is a kind of separating of knowledge, right? A sort of narrowing and separating of the whole into a part and looking at that part. And that's part of, I think, the mess that we're in, is we need to look at the whole, look at the relationship between the whole, and come out of this endless quest for knowledge, which has to do with the intellect a lot and the mind, and come more into the body, the knowing of the heart, and our ability to relate, to connect. Those are the skills that I believe it would really be worthwhile to cultivate. Yeah. So if you see me pause and take a breath, it's because I'm taking a moment to connect. And to be honest with you, I don't find it that easy to talk about connection. It seems a bit absurd, doesn't it? Talk about connection. It's one of those funny things that humans do. Let's get someone on stage and get them to talk about intimacy, but what about experiencing it together? And it reminds me of, when we look out into the world and the ideas out there as to like what we need in order to come out of the troubles we're in. It's all about ideas and strategies and this sense of needing to fix something through ideas that we come up with. Technology will save the world. And what I'm really excited about, and I hope you get excited about too, is the idea of social technology. This is the future that I want to be part of creating with you. The idea that when humans come together and we come into a state of real trust with each other, a state of connection, a state of playfulness, a state of creativity, a state of being in our hearts, then there's something very powerful about that. There's something about that creativity where what emerges between us, the impulses, the ideas, the healing impulses, is just so much more than just what one person or two people or the sum of our parts. It's just greater. So I feel like one of the most important things we could be doing is learning how to come into that state of connection with each other. And it's hard, right? Anyone ever struggled in a relationship? Yeah. Damn it, it's hard. Who knows someone who tried to start a community and failed? Yeah. Yeah. It's hard. We live in times where we're desperate for connection, and it's hard. But yeah, I want to speak about, and it's fitting to do this talk here at the advaya stage, because advaya for me, and I don't know if advaya Ruby would agree with this, but for me, advaya connects to this idea of sacred activism. So it's the sense that the traditional activism is all about the fight against something. It's all about the direct action, yeah, the campaigns, the protests, and yes, of course, there is a need for that, but I think what we're collectively realizing is that, as Einstein realized quite a long time ago, that we need to enter into a different state of consciousness, a different level of awareness to come up with our solutions from the one that created the problems that we're in. And so sacred activism is the sense that we need to evolve our consciousness, we need to embody the change that we wish to see. Yeah, so you've probably heard of this word interbeing. Have you heard of the word interbeing? Yeah. Charles Eisenstein uses it. He got it from somewhere else. Do you know where he got it from? Yeah, Thich Nhat Hanh. And it's this knowing, this direct experience in our bodies that we are connected. And I'm sure that throughout your experience of Medicine Festival, this is something that has been repeated again and again and again, no? This sense of interdependence. That in this universe, there is nothing that is independent. It's an illusion. We are all interconnected. And yet, how do we get from this as a lovely idea to something that's part of our daily lives? When the sense of separation and the pain that that causes is so rampant all around us. So I want to go on a little journey with you to look at, where we've been, where we are now, and where we might head into the future. So if we look at where we've come from, I find this fascinating, that the way that we live now is a tiny percentage of how humans have existed on the planet since we began. So our lifestyle, the way that we live, our cultures, are so radically different from 95% of our history, where we were nomadic hunter-gatherers. So what was life like as a nomadic hunter-gatherer? And I want to offer a disclaimer here that it could be easy to romanticize it and to say, oh, back then we lived in these tribes and we had this sense of unity consciousness and it's all been downhill from there. I think we need to be careful, no? Like, life is inviting us to come out of this binary, polarized thinking and hold the complexity and the paradox. However, I think it's really interesting and enriching to look at, to feel into, to know that it's in our bones. a memory of how it was to live in tribe. We all share it, no matter where on this planet we're from. We all share this experience. So groups would have been, 20, 30, 80, no more than 150 people. How do we know this? Well, there's been research to show that if you have a group of people, and it doesn't matter if it's an 11th century English village or a factory or an indigenous tribe or a military organization, that if you have more than 150 people, something starts to fragment and it's more likely to collapse. So the magic number is 150. So imagine that you live in a group of people, and in your daily life, the people that you see every day, they're all familiar. And they all know you. And in that group, there is no such thing as my problem, my little personal problem that I'm going to have to sort out. There's just our problem. Because the relationships between us are so strong, our survival is so dependent on the quality of our relationships that we are accountable to one another. So the level of narcissism and sadism that you see in our world today just couldn't exist within a tribe and our history. So there was a huge amount of collaboration and generosity, but perhaps more than generosity was responsibility. You're responsible for the well-being of your tribe, and they're going to take care of you. And there's this beautiful phrase, and in fact there's a stage called Ubuntu. Has anyone been to the Ubuntu stage? Yeah, I haven't been there yet. I need to do that today. But Ubuntu, and I think there's a similar word in many different African languages. It means I am because we are. I am because we are. Which is a very different state of affairs to how we are today, but we'll look more at that in a little bit. So not only do we have this history, this information in our bodies, in our DNA, but on a physiological level, we are so primed for connection. So when you are born, when we all come into this life, we are unable to regulate our own nervous systems. So we are absolutely dependent on our mother or our primary caregiver to give us that sense of safety, of belonging, and of being able to feel safe, relaxed. We can't achieve that on our own. We are absolutely dependent on that connection. And we've got a great laboratory inside us to support that connection that we need in order to survive. Enter oxytocin. Yeah, so oxytocin, what is that all about? I want to tell you some facts, some fascinating facts about oxytocin. Oxytocin was, maybe you've heard of it in relation to maternal bonding, right? Yeah, so that's because a bunch of scientists first discovered oxytocin. Ooh, hello wind. First discovered oxytocin in lactating cats. They discovered the presence of oxytocin, and they got a bit fixated about the lactating cats. And so for a long time, oxytocin was known that it's what helps mothers bond with their babies. And not just that, but the uterus actually produces oxytocin. And we need oxytocin in order to give birth. So it's what stimulates the contractions that we then give birth. And then for a while it was kind of trendy to think of oxytocin as the love hormone. Have you heard of that? The love hormone. Yeah, which is also a bit old-fashioned nowadays. So then they discovered that oxytocin is released when it's in all genders, and it's released when we cuddle, when we orgasm, when we're intimate with each other on a physical level. So yeah, it was the bonding, the love hormone, and now we realize what we've always really known, which is that oxytocin is needed for the well-being and the thriving of every major system in the body. So what does that mean? It means that feeling safe and feeling connected is required for our well-being, is required for our bone health, for our immune system, for our reproductive system, for our digestive system, for all these different parts of us. I read a book, it was only a small book written by a doctor about oxytocin, and he just thought oxytocin is the bee's knees. He just wrote a book collating all the evidence, all the research about how oxytocin can support all these different health conditions, from autism to alcoholism to sexual dysfunction in men to cancer. Do you think he mentioned cuddling or kissing or any oxytocin-inducing activities at any point during this entire book? No. Do you know what they do? They administer it intranasally, synthetic oxytocin. Yeah, so when a woman is pregnant, I think maybe that they are catching on to it slowly, but rather than ensure that she's in an environment where she feels really safe and connected, they just give her an intranasal oxytocin spray to induce contraction. Yeah, do you laugh or do you cry? It is a sad state of affairs. Yeah. But we're going to change that, right? Yeah. Yeah, so I also feel like I want to mention this, that, you know, we've really normalized the concept of stress, right? How are you doing? Oh, I'm a bit stressed. Oh, I took some time off work, bit of a burnout. Yeah, oxytocin is the most powerful way of regulating your body, your nervous system, in order to neutralize the cortisol that is produced during stress. So, if all this is true, if we need oxytocin for our well-being, if we need connection, if we need this for our well-being, if we need this in order to get creative, in order to collaborate, in order to call in these futures that require us to come together, create alternative systems, alternative ways of being in the world, why is it so hard? What is going on? Why do we struggle so much? How come it's normal to not know your neighbors? You could live next to someone for like 20 years and not really know them. Why is it normal to spend more time on your phone than actually having soulful connection with another human? How is it possible that we're dependent on the state for support and we don't have these networks to hold us when we need help? Why is it that so many of us feel burnt out and tired from doing it all on your own? Right? Anyone felt tired from having to do it on your own? Oh. So again, I want to look with you about where we've been, to maybe feel ourselves embedded in a larger context. And then look at, what do we need? Yeah, how can we get proactive? How can we use our engagement to make a positive change? Yeah, so has anyone heard of the book The Chalice and the Blade? Yay! Riane Eisler, her name is, isn't it? Yeah. A beautiful book which looks at the history of humanity through a feminist or feminine lens. And she writes about how if you look at the fragments of art, of pottery, ceramics that have been discovered all over the planet, there's a really interesting change that happened at one point, not just at one place in the planet, but that happened all over the planet at the same time, representing some kind of shift in our consciousness. So the art was primarily depictions of fertility and the goddess. And at some point it changed to depictions of war, weapons, things like that. And it's fascinating, isn't it, that it happened all over the planet at a similar time, suggesting there was a shift in our consciousness. And of course there have been various shifts in our consciousness, and we're in the middle of one now. But that was one shift. And then another massive shift was, of course, when we transitioned from being nomadic hunter-gatherers to settling down, agriculture. Yeah, the Neolithic Revolution. So this was a big shift because it was the first time that we ever really experienced owning something and the ability to accumulate things. And again, let's not oversimplify and say, oh, well, it was all downhill from then on, because it's more complex than that. But that represented a big shift, and that led to various other shifts in our consciousness, and also very practically how we did things on the planet. We had the Industrial Revolution, we had the Age of Enlightenment, Renaissance, and basically the individual started taking up more of our consciousness, or we experienced more the importance of us as an individual. And so, yeah, let's remember here that was not necessarily just a bad thing, right? Because with that was the seeds for the sense of having rights, individual rights. It was the seeds of what became democracy. It's the possibility to innovate. If you're an individual, you could be whatever you want to be. No one's holding you back. Life is full of infinite possibilities. What are you going to do with your life, no? And yet, we've taken it a bit far with the sense of the individual, what we can accumulate, the power that we can have for ourselves, the competition, the greed, the taking for ourselves at the expense of all. And so we find ourselves now, in a lonely place. And I think COVID probably all around the world with the lockdowns we had showed us the need we have for connection, right? And how devastating it is when we're not able to experience connection. Which reminds me, I'm going to circle back to oxytocin again, because there's something I wanted to mention that I didn't. And that is, it's interesting how I think the research has been focused on first lactating, birthing women, and then the heterosexual dynamics between men and women. But what about our connection with the earth? No, like when you're lying in the sun, caressing your skin, the breeze, you're stroking an animal. No, these are all ways we can use that inner laboratory of creating oxytocin. Self-pleasuring. probably as well, no? And I bumped into Uma Dunsmore-Chuli at the lake yesterday, and she was telling me about research with oxytocin and yoga nidra. So also we don't actually need others to cultivate oxytocin. We can do it by really coming into a relaxed, connected state with our own bodies. Yeah. So now I'm going to circle back to what I was saying before then, which was, where were we? Now I'm going to test how awake you all are, because I can see some people snoozing. You're very welcome to snooze, really. I'm joking. No, it's a lot of information, hey, to be at this festival. I can feel that there's a sense of fullness in the room. Yeah. 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 Individualism, yeah. Thank you. Gold star for you. Now let's go to what do we need? What do we need to come into more connection? And this is where it gets juicy, because I want to talk less about theory and more about the individual that we also share, like vulnerability of being human. The messy bits of being human, the grit of being human, of being triggered, of learning to work with our trauma, the moments of feeling lost and disconnected, the moments of heartache. Yeah, so I'd like to maybe give this a bit of a framing, that there's a path of the psychological and a path of the spiritual. And the psychological is exactly what I just shared. It's like, how do we really honor our human parts? Who we are as fallible humans on a quest of feeling connected to each other, able to collaborate and create and feel part of the whole. And the spiritual, who are we beyond our human selves? Because that also really plays into connection and how we're here to connect. I'm just going to check the time. Okay. So, what do we need in order to come into more connection? Well, one thing is we can't really connect if we're all in our minds, because connection is also a heart thing, a physical thing. And it's one of our juicy blind spots. I love talking about this. The blind spot of how we're walking around, so many of us, thinking that we're some kind of brain taxi, right? In fact, our language is so illuminating around this. The way we bypass our body. So even in the language, when you say, in a yoga class, they say it as well, no? You listen to the body. As though the body is something separate. Yeah. Think about that. Listen to the body, or am I body? Or when we talk about counting, we're talking about counting. If people are alive, we call it a head count, right? If people are dead, we call it a body count. What is that about? Or that we talk about the head of an organization. Why? Why not the heart of an organization or the lungs of an organization? Yeah. So it's illuminating, looking at our language. It tells us a lot. Yeah, so being in our body is hard, though, in this world, right? It's, in fact, our whole systems are kind of designed, it feels like, to keep us disconnected from our bodies. And with AI, that's taking a scary direction of being more and more disembodied. So yeah, coming into the body, and in order to feel our bodies and come more into our bodies, we need to address what has been, I think, pretty accurately described as the biggest elephant in the room in our society, which is trauma. Which thankfully is becoming a bit of a trend now, isn't it? There's so much work out there on trauma and trauma release techniques, and how trauma is keeping us basically disconnected from our bodies, disconnected from our emotions. Because if trauma takes place when something happens to us and it's too much for us to feel, it's too scary, it's too overwhelming, it gets frozen inside us. It gets locked away. And that's why trauma is so tricky, because the very nature of it is it hides. We can't see it. And yet it also keeps us disconnected from that flow of life that wants to move through us. It keeps us exhausted. It keeps us looking outside of ourselves instead of inside. Did you know, I found this fascinating, although it kind of makes sense. There's research to show that the higher the level of trauma within you, the more you're likely to look for outside authority rather than trust the wisdom of your own body. Makes sense, doesn't it? Yeah. Yeah, so I think the journey that life is inviting us on is to come into contact with those very tender parts of us that feel like it's not safe to be in connection. It's funny that I'm sitting here with this microphone talking to you about connection, because I am one of those people, aren't we all, that really teach what they need to learn. So I remember not that long ago that if I was in a room or a party and there was a cuddle puddle, I would be the first to leave that room. Yeah, cuddle puddles freak me out. An orgy? Pooh, don't get me started. That was my idea of hell. Yeah, and yet I was so fascinated in understanding connection and being on a long, never-ending journey of healing those parts of me that feel really scared of connection, whose first imprints coming into the world when I was born was not the imprint that it's safe to be alive, that it's a really lovely, warm, nourishing place to be me. And I think many of us, you know, who had a perfect childhood, we've all had experiences in our lives which have led us to mistrust each other. And we've normalized it, and this is what I'd like to draw our attention to. Just as a funny example of how different things could be. How normal is it when you see a random stray cat in someone's house or a dog that you're like, oh, come here, you. You're like playing and stroking a cat or a dog. How bizarre the idea of being so free with each other, right? Like you just wouldn't even think about doing that most of the time. Or our closest relative, the bonobo. Do you know about bonobos? Yeah, it's a chimpanzee, you know, it's genetically our closest relative. You know what they do when they have a conflict and they want to make up? They have sex. They have sex like we shake hands. Yeah, but back to the mistrust that we have, that we've normalized. Because when we are in the most vulnerable part of our experience growing up in the world, We're so dependent on our caregivers to mirror us how beautiful we are, how safe we are. And we have these moments or stretches of time of betrayal. I like to call it, it's our original heartbreak, that moment where we realize that life isn't safe. And it causes us to distrust ourselves and distrust the other. Yeah, so there's this beautiful paradox, isn't there, that if we want to create a more beautiful world where we feel that sense of oneness, that everywhere, all over medicine, is all sort of coming to that point, the oneness, the unity consciousness, the sense of connection. We can't skip those really small parts of us that feel so tender and mistrustful, that carry trauma, that feel pain, that feel suffering. I was talking to my friend Andreas Demel the other day, who has a fascinating job. He goes around lots of different communities and he listens to them, basically, and he supports them with their challenges that come up. And so I asked him, why do so many communities fail? What an amazing guy that he has this perspective of connecting with so many different communities. And he said two things. He said, one is that so many people are on this journey of trying to find utopia, yeah? We feel so dissatisfied with the world as it is, and we have this sense that it could be different. We want to find our tribe. We want to create something beautiful. And yet it's that very quest of kind of connecting with this faraway goal of utopia and focusing on the love and light that we forget the part of being human, the grit of being human, the way conflict happens between humans. And that's the second thing that he said. He said, people feel like when conflict begins, it starts fragmenting, and it's kind of going to spiral into fragmentation and collapse. However, what our collective learning edge is that when conflict happens, that's when something begins. That's when it starts. That is when it starts. And I really see that as a thread and a collective learning edge for all of us, that one of the most powerful things we could be doing right now on our planet is learning how to do conflict well. Because it is unavoidable, right? And conflict, in a world of individualism, when it's you against me, and I'm in this kind of binary thinking of right and wrong, that's what Amanda Ripley describes as high conflict, as opposed to good conflict. So good conflict creates intimacy between us. It creates opportunities for growth. It creates some kind of like better outcome for all. Good conflict. High conflict is when we kind of dehumanize each other and it just spirals and spirals into destruction. So how do we do conflict well? That is a magic question right now. So it involves, I think one of the keys, is that we learn to not just put our point of view in the middle, but we learn to listen. We learn to see it from someone else's perspective. we understand that there's a complexity, that it's not just me against you, but you have your needs as well. And it requires that we learn, again, this coming into the body, to notice what parts of me are activated. Am I triggered? Am I feeling like my inner little one is like really afraid or aggressive or is like running the show? Because in that case, it's probably not a good idea to have a debate or a conflict or a conversation with someone. There's this lovely practice called belly to belly that David Cates teaches that couples often use, which is when you notice that you're getting activated, you're getting triggered, you have a rule in your relationship that you never have a conflict from that place. And you do what's called a co-regulating exercise, which is when you kind of attune your nervous systems together by very simply just lying down, belly to belly, and breathing. And there's that beautiful attunement that happens that we can share together, which can be something we can do on our own, but it can be so powerful to do it with another person, to like come into sympathetic, parasympathetic state where we're relaxed, we find our center, and we can speak from that place. Yeah. So doing conflict well and coming into the body, they require a skill of what I describe as our yin skills. Now, we live in a yang-obsessed society and a yin-deficient society. So I want to just take a moment to describe what I mean with these terms, because I think it's a really helpful framing to look at a lot of the fragmentation and disbalance on the planet and within us. So if you think of a plant, right? As the plant comes from seed into blossoming, growing, that's the current of yang. It's this energy of expanding out into the world. It's the doing, the action, setting the goals, going for it. Something where a lot of us, or the collective sort of value system, is very much attuned to the yang. It's where we feel most comfortable, in the doing, right? Funny we're called human beings. You wouldn't think it, would you? Yeah, most of us are running around like a human doing. The yin is that second half of the life cycle of a plant. And I'm just using plant as an example, but you see it in all cycles, and everything is cyclical. So it's the opposite, it's a contraction. Now, it's interesting, isn't it? Because usually when you hear the word contraction, do you think of something a bit negative? Right? Usually it's, oh, I'm feeling a bit contracted. Yeah, that's also kind of illuminating. But there's something that is the most natural, needed phenomena in the world, is of equal value as the expanding, is the contracting, the energy drawing down and in. So every time we let the world in, we're in a conflict, and I'm letting you in, I'm listening to you. That's a yin skill. Every time I come into my body and feel how I am, that's a yin skill. Every time I slow down, that's yin. Every time I notice that I'm getting angry and activated and I'm pointing the finger at you, and then I'm like, hang on a minute, what's going on? Oh, I'm triggered. I've got this projection on you. That inner work is a yin skill. And the tragedy that we live in is that, yeah, we value the yang and not the yin. And most of us are really, well, the planet as well is suffering as a result of this. Do you feel like you're often doing things in a hurry? Yeah, and there's a feeling of like insufficient time. Yeah, that's a yang-obsessed society. Do you feel guilty when you're resting? Yeah, big one. That's a yang-obsessed society. But not only that, it's not only our cultural conditioning that makes us struggle with the yin, it's also tough, right? Because when we bring our awareness within, we come into contact with uncomfortable parts of being human, which make me feel like I'd rather just have a scroll on my phone than bring my awareness within and feel my anxiousness or my tension in my body or my loneliness or my whatever it is. And yet all the spiritual traditions are sort of pointing to the need to meet our suffering. How are you all doing? Yeah? I'm gonna just share a little bit more and then in fact, I wish from the beginning we were sitting in circle. That's what I do usually. I sit in circle. It's out of my comfort zone to be sitting here talking at you. I want to hear from you because I think the magic of being together is also when someone has the medicine for what we all need to hear, and that will be different ones of us in different moments of time. Yeah. Is there 5 miles? Is there 5 minutes left? Oh, wow. Oh. Oh. Yeah, 5 minutes, gosh. I do want to, I want to share something within that 5 minutes and then we'll see if there's a question or anything that wants to be shared from you. Let's see. Huh? Oh, yeah, thank you. Perfect, yeah. Yeah, because I want to speak to what I feel like is our collective learning edge. And it's something that, as someone who gives workshops and who knows a lot of facilitators and who's been to a lot of festivals, and I'm a bit of an edge dweller, so often you'll find me in the field over there. And I like to witness and look at like what's going on. What does this reveal about where humanity is right now? And one of the things that I see is that on our quest and our hunger for connection, as beautiful and precious and sacred as it is, that there's something about that focus on the individual and our sort of isolated selves that we've normalized that means that we can sort of throw ourselves into connection and lose ourselves as a result. I'm sure the term codependent relationship isn't new to you. So there's this question that I'd like to end with, which is, how do we come into that beautiful sense of unity and connection and interdependence that we all somehow know is possible, and not lose ourselves. Because often what I see at gatherings and festivals is that we're very quick to jump into connection. And there's often a sense of like having to sacrifice our individuality or compromise our authenticity in order to belong, right? There's a danger of it turning into a bit of a oneness soup. And I think what the world needs is for each of us to really claim who we are, our individual essence, and recognize that there's no one else. There's no other Ruby. There's no other Mark. There's no other Giles. There's no other Ilana. We're all unique, and the world needs us to really tap into what is our individual gift to share. What is Daniel's essence that he's going to share with the world? Yeah, and we're not going to get that if we allow ourselves to just merge into a big soupy oxytocin puddle. But the question I'd like to end with is, what does that look like? What does it look like, a world in which we really celebrate diversity of our unique individual expressions, and still find a way to connect? And this is what, for me, is like the dark side of oxytocin, is that we can lose that. And research shows that if you're high on oxytocin, you're going to be more threatened by people who aren't your close little tribe. Yeah, so how do we find that balance? I don't have the answers. I'm here to explore with you. Thank you for listening and your attention on this final day of this beautiful gathering. We have a few minutes? Yeah. And before we have a question or a share, I just want to say that, was anyone here last year and went to Bitches and Bastards with me and Jamie Catter? Yay! So Jamie Catter and I are going to be in Brighton the last weekend of September doing a workshop called Bitches and Bastards, how to unsabotage your relationships and turn your shadows into gold. So let me know if you want to come. Give me your email address or have a look for Jamie Cato. No, good question. Yeah, we've had people come as singles and find a partner. We've had partners come and break up as a result of the way. We've had everything. It's if you know Jamie Cato, you'll have a jolly time. It's And then also, if you would love to have more play and connection and silliness and depth and the spectrum of connection in your life, me, Jamie Cato, and about 15 other facilitators have collaborated together to create this card game called The Game. And I've got some copies. Yay! I'll give you your money afterwards, thanks. I don't want to take them home in my suitcase to Berlin, so please come and find me and grab a copy so you can take a little connection gem back with you. Okay. Maybe there's no questions and there's nothing to share, and silence, yin, is okay too. If your heart is beating... Okay, thanks. If your heart is beating and you feel like, wow, I really need to say something, I would love to give you space to share.
Incredible, by the way. Thank you for your journey. I think listening to journey more than knowledge, understanding through experience, with a balance of love, love in a wise way. Like, I'm here. I'm not high on love. I'm fucking here, So when you were speaking, the reason why I put my hand up was I felt an insight from one of my friends that had a conversation with me in my own experience during this weekend, which was experiencing love. And I come from a long, I feel like my life has always been about relationships, struggling relationships, been cheated on, been in a long-term relationship, had my core heart broken, that related to from teenage years to younger years as I've done more and more work, and it's been such a story in my life. So I come back to when I was spending time with my friend that day, and I was a bit lost in love. I was a bit lost and unsure. And he whispered into my ear something, and these are not my words, so I'm passing these on, of what I feel like it is you're speaking to, at least how I see it to be true, of love and understanding in the similar way of balance with yin and yang. If I'm to contract my breath, and just like breathe in and in and in, like I can't breathe anymore. So I have to do and be. And as easy as the somatic instead of the intellectual. So I don't really have a question, but that really spoke to me, so thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, no, you don't have to have a question. I'm appreciating the transmission, the offering the gift. Thank you. Yeah. Is there anyone else?
I don't really have a question either. I just wanted to thank you.
Will you hold the microphone a bit closer?
Sorry, I wanted to thank you for what you shared, but also most importantly for the game.
Oh.
It was bought for me as a gift from someone who went on your workshop, and I've played it in many different settings with many different people, but the most important and revelatory has been with my adult children and my ex-husband.
Oh.
And we've played probably 4 or 5 times and had conversations we'd never have. So, and it's really important. We were just walking, when we were walking up, saying we're going to take it, we have an annual family holiday with just us, and it's no partners, and it's just really nice to learn things about each other and to be able to tell adult children things about you, about our ancestors, where we came from, our experience of being teenagers, all sorts, and to play, which is great. So congratulations.
Yay.
And thank you.
Thank you. I think that's the last question we have time for. Share. Hi.
Hi, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, your energy, your words on this speech. I don't have a question, it's just a share. Just to clarify, it's important to differentiate love and attachment, no? Because sometimes we think that it's the same thing, but it is not, no? Because an example of this is sometimes when we have a lot of attachment, we love our dear beings, no? Like my mom, my pet, my girlfriend, no? If I love more my girlfriend than the stranger in the street, it's not love, no? That's an attachment. If I love more my mom than my enemy, also is an attachment. So it's important to differentiate that, and just unconditional love is equal for everyone without attachments, no? It's for all the beings because all the beings wants to be happy, no? That's it. Thank you so much.
Beautiful. Thank you. I think those are our closing words. Yeah? Yeah. Let's go create some love, people. Yay. Thank you.